Hello and welcome back to our next line series of answering our dear old Dr. Rajiv Malhotra. For those of you who missed the first of the series, you should look it up. It's very interesting. We got some very good, encouraging feedback on that. What we are doing essentially, just for a quick recap, based on many requests from our brothers and sisters to answer Dr. Rajiv Malhotra for his various comments against Christianity. We requested him for a debate, and it's the entire transcript of the mail is there on our website. You should look it up. And it's also there in the comment section, you can always click on it. We requested him for a debate, and against all odds he agreed to it. Then after a long mail chain and many personal comments to us, he ran away. So left with no choice, we did what we typically do. We have started answering his comments point by point with tons of evidence. Something that Dr. Rajiv Malhotra, as you've seen in the earlier presentation, is something that he shies away from. So here I am again with my dear old brother. I wouldn't say old, he's pretty young, and brother Jerry, and we are taking this entire chain ahead. So brother Jerry, welcome to the show, and
thanks for
what is there on the menu today?
As we discussed in the last episode, we will begin one of the themes that is covered in Dr. Rajiv Malhotra's book Breaking India. The first one is Dravidian. So he says that the Aryan migration, or in fact he calls it as Aryan invasion. So he says that it never took place. So we will look into some of that, his arguments. Wow. And how he has presented the argument.
This is really interesting, because I've had quite a few discussions, including that with my own brother-in-law, and many people say that everything is indigenous to India: the people, the culture, the religion, the language, Sanskrit as a mother of all languages, and so many other things we get to hear. And so I'm really looking forward to this, brother. So how do we start?
So we will look initially what Sri Rajiv Malhotra has written in his book.
So what exactly he's saying is that there is nothing called as an Aryan invasion or migration. Everything is indigenous. Can I say that? Is that what he's saying?
Correct.
Okay, please go ahead.
First of all, let me make very clear that I also don't accept Aryan invasion.
Okay.
But I accept Aryan migration.
I'm sorry, but what's the point?
So Aryan invasion, see, from an archaeology purpose focus, if Aryan invasion should have happened, then there should have been mass graves. Then there should have been such a slaughter. So you need to have all those kind of evidence to speak about invasion.
Okay.
But migration need not have any of those things.
So what is Dr. Malhotra stand? He's against invasion or migration? What does he do?
So invasion, Aryan invasion, most of the scholars have rejected it, or most of the scholars don't accept it anymore.
Okay.
So however, the Hindutva speakers, when they know that most of the scholars don't accept Aryan invasion, they keep on holding to that. But most of the scholars accept Aryan migration. However, as per Sri Rajiv Malhotra, he says, let us look what he says in the Kindle book that you have it here. He says that he initially in the introduction he says that this led me to research the colonial era construction of the Dravidian identity, and he goes on to say its survival depends upon the belief in the theory of foreign Aryans and their misdeeds. Foreign Aryans. So he completely rejects it, and then in another part of the book, again you can see in this chapter, he says that Aryan migration, he speaks about the Western scholar, and he says that one Western scholar, and Sri Rajiv Malhotra says that Aryan migration scenario, she supports the Aryan migration scenario, and he goes on to say, which amounts to the same thing as Aryan migration.
So he's saying that Aryan invasion and migration is the same.
He says it is essentially the same.
How can that be the same? It's common sense.
Yeah, for him it is the same, because for the Hindutva India, whether it is an Aryan invasion or
so
Aryan
they have
migration,
a separate axe to grind. It's not really about intelligence. It's nothing about
absolutely
truth. Okay,
absolutely.
Excellent. Okay.
So we will look at some of the...
Just to summarize, brothers and sisters, what Dr. Malhotra is saying, even for people who are in undergraduate English would know that there is a world of difference between something called as an invasion and something called as a migration. Invasion is by force, migration is something that happens over a period of time, people trickling in or without the application of force. An invasion can lead to a migration, but a migration doesn't essentially lead to an invasion at all. They may have skirmishes, they may fight, but that fight doesn't mean invasion.
So We will begin by looking at some of the evidences, so-called evidences of Sri Rajiv Malhotra presence in his book.
Okay, I'm glad you are presenting. Okay, yeah.
So, Sri Rajiv Malhotra repeatedly writes in this book that Baba Sahib, Dr. Ambedkar, he had categorically rejected the Fourier-Aryan model. So,
He is, I'm sure everybody knows that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, one of the foremost thinkers of India. He is known as the father of the Indian Constitution, an extremely brilliant man, and I have my deepest respects for him.
So, Sri Rajiv Malhotra explicitly says that Baba Sahib Ambedkar rejected the Aryan invasion theory.
Did he?
Yeah. And he says that Baba Sahib, Dr. Ambedkar demolished it. Categorically
Has he given any evidence?
He brings one quotation from Baba Sahib Ambedkar's book, which says that the nasal index racism.
Okay, what is that?
And he says that the measurements that establish, this is Baba Sahib Ambedkar's quote, which Sri Rajiv Malhotra produces it as an evidence. The measurements establish that the Brahmin and the untouchables belongs to the same race. So he says that there is no difference in race between the Brahmin and the untouchables. So he goes on to speaks about the same thing, whether the Brahmins, whether if the Brahmin is a Dravidian, then the untouchable is also Dravidian. If the Brahmin is from a different this thing, then the untouchable is also this thing.
Yeah.
So that is the quotation that Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar has given in his book, and Sri Rajiv Malhotra produces that as an evidence. So initially when you look, you think that Baba Sahib Ambedkar rejected the two race or the three race.
Okay.
However, what Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar says is that race theory cannot be applied to the caste system. That doesn't mean that he rejects it.
Okay.
For example, let us take the same quote.
Okay.
This quote is given in this book, The Untouchables, Who Are They and Why They Became Untouchables.
Okay.
So this book is available online. Anybody can go and check the sources,
and buy it,
or even read it free online as well. So this is available free also online, so you can read it. In this book, as you can see it online as well, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, he says that there are two different kinds of people in India.
Okay.
Now I am quoting from Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar.
Okay.
Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar in this book, part 3, chapter 7, he says there are Nagas, and he says who are the Nagas? Who were the Nagas?
Okay.
Undoubtedly, they were non-Aryans. So Nagas in India, as per Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, they were non-Aryans.
Okay.
And then he goes on to say,
but the Nagas were indigenous to India, right?
Nagas were indigenous to India as per Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar.
Okay.
They were the.
But he's saying they're still non-Aryans.
They are non-Aryans.
Okay.
And then Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar in the same book, in the same chapter, he continues. He says, who are the Dravidians? Who are the Dravidians? Are they different from Nagas? Generally, people think that they are different.
Okay.
But Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar says, nonetheless, the term Dravidian and Nagas are merely two different names for the same people. Now you must, if you put it in an equation, Nagas is equal to
Dravidians.
Nagas is equal to non-Aryan.
Non-Aryans, yeah.
Nagas is equal to Dravidians. Therefore, Dravidians is equal to non-Aryans.
A equal B equals C to A equals
correct,
C.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is given in the same book from where Sri Rajiv Malhotra has taken the evidence.
Wow. Okay.
So, however, Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes on to speak about the Nagas and the language.
Wow. Okay.
Now, since we have covered the Dravidian language and all in that aspect, I thought it is interesting to see what Baba Sahib Ambedkar speaks about the same thing as well.
About the Dravidian language.
About the Dravidian language. So, in the same book, same part, same chapter.
Okay.
Baba Sahib Ambedkar says, Asuras originally spoke a language which is different from the Aryas. Asuras spoke and he says that this is very given in the Rig Veda and the other Hindu scriptures, and he produces the evidence on how the Hindu scriptures mocked at the language of the Asuras. So there was an Asura language, there was an Aryan language.
Asura would be what?
Asura would be demon.
Demons. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. How does Asura apply to Dravidians?
Correct. So then Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar,
Mm-hmm.
in the same book, in the same chapter, in the same part, he says that Asura language is actually the what these people call as the what the
Asura
Hindus call
language.
as the Asura language is the Tamil language.
Seriously?
Yes, he says that this view that the Tamil and the cognate languages were founded upon the ancient Asura speech is strongly confirmed by the fact, and then he goes on to explain the reasons for it. So, and then the most interesting part for the Hindutva spokespersons like Sri Rajiv Malhotra is that in the same chapter, in the same book which they quote, Dr. Baba, same chapter. Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes on to say, it's in the same same book actually.
Yes.
Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes on to say that the third thing to remember is that Tamil or Dravidia was not merely the language of South India, but before the Aryans came. You can read it.
Before it came.
Before the Aryans came.
So the Aryans were never there from day one.
Day one.
Yeah.
But what we read in Sri Rajiv Malhotra's book is Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar categorically rejected the foreign Aryan model. Here we see Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar's own book, on writing, he says, before the Aryans came, Tamil was the language of the whole India and was spoken from Kashmir to Cape Comorin.
What is Cape Comorin?
Kanyakumari.
Okay. Wow. So he's saying, okay.
Yeah.
The thing. Wow. This is amazing. So what he's saying essentially, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, is that Tamil is the language that is spoken across the whole of India before the Aryans came. Came means they were not there from the indigenous type of perspective. Okay.
So definitely the Hindutva crowd can ask a question back. Baba Sahib Ambedkar has anticipated that question and he answered it also. So we will cover that also before. Otherwise they will come back with the same question.
Okay.
So the question would be the Nagas in the north. If the Nagas and Dravidians are the same, the Nagas in the North India, they don't speak the Dravidian language. Many of them don't speak the Dravidian language.
Wow.
So how can you explain? So Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar in the same book, in the same chapter, he says that the Nagas in the North India, he says, as strange as it may appear, the effect of this contact on the Nagas of North India was quite different from the effect that it produced on the Nagas of South India. The Nagas in the North India gave up Tamil, which was their mother tongue, and adopted Sanskrit in its place. The Nagas in South India retained Tamil as their mother tongue and did not adopt the Sanskrit, the language of the Aryans. So Nagas of the North India, they gave up the Tamil and they adopted the Aryan language. The Nagas of the South India never accepted the Aryan language. So
this is common sense, if I may interject over here. I'm sorry. If I go, let's assume, and settle down in Africa, to better gel in with the people, I will pick up the language of that area. Yeah. And over a few generations, my descendants will literally forget Indian languages and start speaking the local languages over there. That is given by default, but that doesn't mean that my descendants were living in Africa from day one.
Okay. But in this case, what had happened is the migrants who came, the Aryan migrants who came, the Nagas who were left in the North India, they gave up their mother tongue and they started accepting.
See, it depends on who's the dominant species.
Correct, absolutely. Depends upon who is the dominant this thing. In this case, the North India was dominantly occupied by the Aryans when they came to India. And therefore, the Nagas who were left there,
they had no choice. If you want to survive, you better pick up.
Correct. There are still some pockets where the speakers continue to speak the Dravidian language.
At least as a second language. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll look at that later. But here is the point. The point is, Sri Rajiv Malhotra in this book explicitly, repeatedly says that Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar rejected the two-race theory. However, what Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar had rejected is that race cannot be accepted to the caste.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Race is separate, caste is separate. You cannot mix it together and make one theory.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Because when they, the Hindu religion, when it started spreading to South India as well, the initial religion of the Dravidians were not Hinduism. When the Hindus came, we will look at it in another episode.
Yes.
But when the Hindus came to South India and started spreading the religion, The caste system was there, the Dravidians also accepted the caste system.
Right.
Now you can see a Dravidian Brahmin also.
Yes.
And a Dravidian untouchable also, Dravidian outcast also.
So just because they have untouchability in South India and untouchability in the North Indians doesn't mean that both the races were the same.
Correct.
It simply means that they are following the same culture.
Same culture, same religion once they adopted it.
Yes, yes.
So, what Baba Sahib Ambedkar, to repeat, because this is a repeated statement not only from Sri Rajiv Malhotra but many of the Hindutva spokespersons says, what Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar rejected is not the two race theory but applying the race to the caste, which is totally different.
It is, it's really appalling, brother. It's really appalling that same chapter is not even a very thick book. If I look at it, it's what, 160 odd pages.
Yeah.
And in the very same chapter, I think chapter 7, Dr. Ambedkar has unequivocally closed the thing. My question for Dr. Rajiv Malhotra is, have you not even read that one chapter? Or have you relied on somebody else to give you some buffet lunch type of spoon feeding that you just picked up that part?
And even otherwise, as Narendran had correctly pointed out, it's just a 160 page book. You can read it in one sitting.
How can you make a mistake? I can understand some other book, Dr. Ambedkar saying something else.
Correct.
The same book, the same chapter, he refuted you 20 times and you haven't read it.
Correct.
Seriously.
So,
okay.
That is, Sri, as we again to remind our viewers, like last time also we mentioned how Sri Rajiv Malhotra misrepresents the research work of others for his own motives, to achieve his own motives.
Some others, brother, beyond that, is there some other arguments that you can give with regards to this Aryan immigration, Aryan invasion or Aryan migration, as whatever they may call it as? Is there any additional evidence beyond what we have just seen, or has Dr. Rajiv Malhotra spoken something else that we can look at?
Yeah, Sri Rajiv Malhotra has spoken some other arguments as well, especially he has brought the genetics part as well. But
genetics also?
Yeah. We will look into that. But since you raised that question whether there are other arguments, let me speak some arguments which were initially convincing to me as well.
Okay.
When I looked at initially without looking at the other part also, it sounded convincing. Let me actually share, though Rajiv Malhotra has not covered in this book, I don't know whether he has covered in any other book. He has not covered in this book, but at least let us discuss those.
Yes, of course, please.
Yeah. One is the what we can call as the Saraswati river argument.
Okay.
In the Saraswati river argument, the argument is very simple. The Rig Veda mentions the Saraswati as a mighty river flowing. It has a mighty river which is flowing. And however, all the historians, whether they accept the Aryan migration or they consider Aryans as natives, whatever, all of them accept that the Saraswati river started drying up somewhere around say 1800 to 1500 BC.
Achha, it started drying up.
It started drying up.
Okay.
So the argument is, if Saraswati river had started drying up around that time, and if Rig Veda had to mention that Saraswati as a mighty river flowing, then Rig Veda should have been written before that.
Okay.
So that is convincing. So since Rig Veda describes this as a mighty river, Rig Veda is definitely before the BC 2000.
Yes,
to be
approximately.
BC 2000, it is before that.
Or even earlier.
Even much earlier.
Yes.
They say
could be
4000, 5000, but it should be definitely before.
Much before, 1800 BC.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So this argument initially was convincing to me as well. I thought this is a strong argument.
So this argument is with regards to dating of the
dating of the
dating
Vedas.
or the migration. What is this about?
So this argument deals with the dating of the Vedas, but dating of the Vedas has an implication for the migration as well, because
that's what I was wondering.
Correct.
Okay.
Much of the Vedas, the geographical locations that are described are in the Punjab and the other areas. So Vedas, at least in this form, mostly agreed that it was written somewhere in the Indian geographical location itself.
Okay.
So in that case, the Saraswati river describing it as a mighty river, then definitely is a sound argument, is a strong argument initially.
Yes.
But when we look at the other side, when we look at the those who reject it, the arguments that they present, then you will start seeing actually the loopholes in this argument. How hollow is this argument?
Right.
For example, the the initial part of the argument is from say there are many mandalas and many hymns regarding the Saraswati as a mighty river, like Rig Veda.
Even in the Vedas.
Rig Veda,
Okay.
Mandala 10, hymn number 75.
Okay.
That is described there. But on the other hand, Rig Veda Mandala 3, 33. Rig Veda Mandala 3 actually, no, I am not speaking just about chronological, but Rig Veda Mandala 3 is one of the oldest in the part of the Rig Veda as well, section of the Rig Veda. It says that there is a merging of the river Sutlej and Bias.
BS is again another river.
Another river. Now, Sutlej, now you should understand, was the main source of the Saraswati.
Okay. Okay, it used to feed into the Saraswati. Okay.
So Saraswati had its main source from the Sutlej. Once Sutlej actually diverted
to the Beas River.
To the Beas River, Saraswati started drying up.
Oh, okay. That was the reason behind the drying up.
That was the main reason behind the drying up.
Okay.
So that being the reason, how can the earliest portion of the Rig Veda mention that Sutlej and Beas actually are merging? Because the diversion already happened.
Yes, okay.
Diversion already happened.
Okay.
Initially when they started writing itself, the diversion had already happened. So this is the first problem actually. It is mentioned in Rig Veda Mandala 3, hymn number 33.
So it speaks about the merging of Sutlej and Beas happening, which then led to the drying up. So the Rig Veda couldn't have been written earlier to 1800 BC anyway.
If you take, we have to take all the data. If you have to take, because then definitely it will not have been written before that.
Right.
Now again, that is not the only problem.
Okay.
The next problem is actually in the same Rig Veda, in the Mandala 6, hymn number 61. It speaks about the beginning of the Saraswati river, and it says that the Saraswati with her might, like the one who digs from lotus stems, hath burst with the strong waves with the ridges of the hills. It speaks about as if it is
a mighty river
flowing from a mighty hill.
Wow. Okay.
So, but when we actually look at the Indian Saraswati river, it starts from a low hill.
There is no mighty hill.
There is no mighty. The source is not there.
Right.
So again, that raises a question: are they describing about the same Saraswati?
Yes. It could be a different.
It could be a different.
The thought crossed my mind. Okay.
It could be a different. So the people who reject the Aryan, the Aryans as native and argue that the Aryans are migrants or came from outside, say that it could have been a name which they had it in their motherland when they came to India. When they came to this land, the Aryans came to India. They started naming from the previous names as well.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's very interesting because you see that happening in the United States.
Correct.
Most of the names, the countries or the cities are what you see found in other countries also. Like a Paris, it has an Athens, it has a Rome. Can you believe there are cities called as, or provinces called as Athens and Paris and Rome, even in the United States of America.
Correct.
So when the settlers came from UK, from France and all those areas, they wanted those places to be named as per.
Correct.
Can I say that?
Correct.
Have I understood you right?
Absolutely. Yes. You can see that in India as well.
Okay.
For example, Udaipur. There are 3 Udaipurs. If you look at the map, if you just go to Google Map and look at it, there are 3 Udaipurs. There are 3 Madurais.
Wow.
Though it is spelled differently, there are 3 Madurais. So there are different locations because it happens that when the migrants move from say Gujarat to Tamil Nadu, they will name Madura with their old name. Who came from Varanasi to Gujarat to Tamil Nadu, they name the same city. All the 3 cities have the same name.
Right.
So it happens all the time. It happens. It is not a
something unheard of.
So same thing would have happened for the Saraswati because the Saraswati description doesn't fit with the current Saraswati, or the Saraswati as we archaeologically find that Saraswati doesn't fit, the description doesn't fit.
Right.
And in the initial parts of Rig Veda itself, the merging of the Saraswati source river is mentioned. So the Saraswati would have been initially drying up when they came to India, which matches with the Aryan migration.
Wow. Okay.
Not the Aryan nativity part.
So
this, as I said, was one of the strong arguments. When I heard it, I also found it good. And the second argument that I found convincing was the astronomical date given by Sri Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak.
Oh,
And
also
the Western scholar Hermann Jacobi. Interestingly, both the Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak and the Western scholar Jacobi came up with the same thesis around the same time coincidentally without discussing with each other.
Right, right.
So this, in summary,
okay, both came up with the same argument.
Same argument around the same time.
Okay. So what was the argument?
So the argument is this, that Indians generally follow the lunar calendar. So there are 27 locations for the moon each day. So you say nakshatra and the 27 locations. So if you each day actually it is in one locations as per the calendar.
Right.
Now equinox or
equinox.
Yeah, equinox or solstice. It will fall every year in the same
position.
Same position. It takes 1,000 years, approximately 1,000 years, before it moves from say location A to location B, equinox.
Wow. Okay.
So if you know where the equinox, if the Vedas describe where the equinox is, then you can actually date
extrapolate and go back and
write and say that okay, then it would have been written at this time.
Yes, yes.
So Sri Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak came up with this data theory, and then he proposed that Vedas could have been written initially at around 4000 BC. So this initially sounded little convincing because if it happens like that, then fine.
Yeah.
But the moment actually you start reading Sri Bal Gangadhar Tilak himself and look at the arguments, you find actually that there are several layers of assumptions to reach up to this conclusion.
By Bal Gangadhar
Tilak and Jacobi.
Okay, they have made assumptions.
They have made assumptions.
Okay.
For example, when we are speaking about equinox or solstice, there is no explicit mention of any of these things in the Vedas.
Seriously?
Yes.
So on what basis they got that?
Correct. Let us read the Sri Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak in his Orion or the Antiquity of Vedas preface on page number 5.
Yeah.
He says that he has interpreted certain words, Sanskrit words, to mean that. And initially in his preface he says, in other words, it is the Sanskrit scholars who have first of all to decide if my interpretation of certain text are correct or not.
Okay, wow.
So there is no explicit mention. He is interpreting certain words to mean this.
Yeah.
Whether that meaning is correct or not, we do not know.
Yeah.
So first problem is that. Second problem is that there is again Sri Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak himself has referred this. There is no explicit mention of any calendar in the Vedas.
Seriously?
We don't know whether they had a proper calendar. So again, it is another assumption that we have to make. What Sri Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak says in this connection is that they had several sacrificial hymns. They had an elaborate sacrificial ceremonies. You can read it in the preface, the chapter 2 of it, Sacrifice Alas the Year, page number 11. He says that therefore, since if they have to have an elaborate sacrificial system, then you need to have a calendar. So he says that
it is required. Otherwise, how will you manage the sacrifices?
So it will not be too much to presume that in the Vedic times there must have existed a calendar to regulate the sacrifices. But how precise the calendar should have been, it's another question. They should have had an ordinary calendar. Now this is another problem. Now the third problem with this, first problem is that there is no mention of equinox or solstice in the Vedas. Second, there is no explicit mention of calendar. We have to assume that as well. Third problem is another major problem. There are contradictory evidences data within the same Hindu scriptures.
Wow. Okay.
So, for example, if you say in the equinox or in this whatever the interpretation that in this festival ought to be conducted at this time, there are other texts which says that this festival ought to be conducted in another day.
Wow. Okay.
So Jacobi, for example, looks at the sutras and he brings this point, and you can read it in Edwin Bryant's book, The Quest for the Origins of the Vedic Culture. He says that Jacobi answers or tried to explain it by saying that these are data from two different times. It is just that one did not remove the other data, so both the data are here. Now this is another huge assumption.
Because
you have contradictory data, you have conflicting data, and you are somehow trying to explain it. Now, apart from this, Sri Lokamanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak himself in his book, initially itself he rejected the entire Purana text, saying that there are many contradictory evidences in that, so therefore he is not taking it. So you are actually selecting and interpreting and making assumptions to build this theory.
Yes, yes.
Now the danger of this is shown by, say, David Pingree, who is a mathematician and a historian.
Okay.
He says that a displacement of the beginning of equal Nakartra by some 10 degrees or an error of 10 days in computing the data of winter solstice. Solstice. Or the combination of these two.
Yeah.
Is that all required to bring the date from the 12th century to the 5th century BC.
Oh, sure. So you are saying, or rather what Dr. David Pingree is saying is that even if there is a difference of 10 days or 10 degrees in these calculations of the solstice, the dates can change from 5th century BC, 12th to 5th century.
12th century BC to 5th
a
century.
700-year difference can be brought
700 years of difference that can be brought up.
By just 10 degrees.
By 10 degrees.
So they are assuming that their calculations were right in the first place.
So precise. They were assuming that the calculations are so precise. Now all the problem with this argument is that there are several layers of assumptions. You have to reject certain data, conflicting data by explaining it away, and then over and above it you have to have a very precise, to the point calendar, which is a huge assumption to make such a huge claim.
That's really amazing. Brother, I'm sorry, but we have reached the end of our time. As much as I'm loving this thing, and I'm sure that our viewers are loving it more than that, we have to call it a day for now. And we can maybe continue with a different topic. What do you have on mind for the next topic?
We haven't completed the entire argument of Sri Rajiv.
We haven't yet on Aryans.
On Aryan migration.
Wow. So come back again. And we'll take this thing ahead. You know, it reminds me of two things, brother. If I may just take a minute and close this thing. In the Holy Bible, it's written in the book of Proverbs that the first person to speak in court always seems right until his opponent begins to question him. I don't remember the verse, but I'll put it up for you. And when you were saying it again and again, that verse came into my mind. You know, if I remember you saying it so well, that is when I read it the first time, it looked right. Like the Saraswati river argument or Bal Gangadhar Tilak's argument. It looked right, but then when you started questioning it, you came to know that it's not true.
Absolutely.
So that's what that's what the Holy Bible says.
Yes.
Thousands of years back.
Yes.
The first person to speak in court always seems right until his opponent begins to question him. And second, brother, to pick up on the continual misquotes of Dr. Rajiv Malhotra is, if I got the name right, he was the propaganda minister of Hitler in the Nazi Germany. I think his name was Joseph Goebbels. And he said something interesting, right?
Yeah.
That if you repeat a lie enough number of times, it gets taken as a truth. So that's exactly what the propaganda of the Hindutva, spokesperson, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra has done, is that repeated the same nonsense again and again and again, which his followers, his blind followers, have taken up as a fact. Brother, I cannot begin to express how much I loved and I'm loving doing this. Come back again, and we'll pick this up again. Thank you again, brother. Take care. God bless you.